Conference will now be recorded.
I guess even though Ken is here remotely, being we kind of have at least a board policy of a chair for a meeting should be physically present, I will call this meeting of the Tuesday, February 10th Village Board of Trustees meeting to order. In Ken's physical absence, I'd ask the board to nominate a temporary chair for this meeting.
I move that we appoint Carly Mulligan to chair this meeting of the village board.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Carly.
No discussion?
Yes. All right. Thank you. We do have a quorum. And just a reminder, we do have quite a few people online. So if you are speaking, make sure you're speaking clearly into the microphones. And I know Brett and we have discussed some changes in the agenda due to some visitors we have, including moving up 10A and B up to after 8A and also 9A as well. Any other changes to the agenda? All right. Do we have any specific visitors' comments? Otherwise, we can wait until the agenda item they have. All right. Okay. Could I get a motion to approve the previous minutes? We have two sets.
I move we approve the village board meeting minutes from Tuesday, January 13th of 2026, 7 p.m.
Could I get a second?
I will second that, Ken.
Thanks, Ken. Any discussion or questions? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, thank you. Motion carries.
I move we approve the village board meeting minutes from Tuesday, January 20th, 2026 at 9 a.m.
All right, can I get a second?
Carly,
Second that, Rick.
I think we might have to add to the motion that those were amended on February 2nd, 2026.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah, adding
Oh, I see
that
that.
these meeting minutes were amended the 2nd of February, 2026.
Thank you. Could I get a motion for the amended minutes? I think that was Matt. All right, any discussion or questions? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. All right. Ken, do you have any president's comments at this time?
I do not, thanks.
All right. Okay, so then could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
I move to approve the consent agenda items as presented.
All right, a second, please.
Second, Ken.
Thanks, Ken. All right, any questions or discussions? All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, thank you. Motion carries. All right, so the first agenda item we have here is discussion and consideration regarding Door County Emergency Communications Tower project located at 2683 German Road. And as a brief reminder, we have had a few conversations about this. One of the things that we are specifically talking about with this agenda item is the proposal for a specific location on our German Road property. We have had some engineers to look at the site and have some proposed options for us to review. It does give us better coverage than we had seen in a previous iteration of the plan. We have met as a CPC and have a recommendation, but I will see if Ashley has anything to say before we go there.
See,
Yeah, there you go.
I was going to do it right and then I didn't. So first,
It went up.
all right, are we good now? Okay. Thank you for having us back to revisit this topic, and thank you for doing the site walk with us. We've most certainly picked the coldest day of the year, so that was enjoyable. But I think it really helped to get out there and have the engineers take a look at the parcel itself, just to have an understanding of that. What we presented, well, a couple different things, right? So we have the plans with 3 potential locations. As per our previous conversations, those were kind of just the areas that we had, talked about. In discussing with the engineer, and I think we kind of touched on this a little bit, the initial option, which I think is 3, over by the landfill area, is probably our least recommended, just because the boundaries for the landfill are they're not necessarily set in stone. So if we run into any issues and digging and contamination, then that creates a big issue with that. So then that kind of leaves us to the other 2 options, 1 and 2 on the right side of the parcel. 1, obviously, from an infrastructure standpoint, is the easiest and best because it's closest to the road. It's less disruption to the parcel overall and in, long term. But option 2 is not out of the question either. I mean, it's completely doable with the path. It's ultimately just what the village would feel most comfortable with allowing us to pursue. So that information was in there. They included a little bit of a sample of what those compounds would look like with the shelter, the structure base, the generator, and like a gas tank, and then also a sample of what a structure would look like with the antennas. And then we had our legal draft up
I'm going to pause you really quickly. That's
sure.
the second agenda
Okay, sure.
item.
Got it. Okay, perfect.
And I did want to clarify if we could actually go back to the 3 sites. I think, unless I'm understanding incorrectly, option 2 is the one that's closer to German Road, and then
Yes.
option 1 is
Yes.
okay. Great.
Sorry. Yes, you're
okay.
correct.
Thank you.
It's really hard to read on mine. I should have printed it on bigger paper. Yes, you are correct. So yes, option 2 would be the best from an infrastructure standpoint, but not the other one's not out of the question either. So.
And as we discussed previously, all of these locations still give us the improved coverage that we're looking for.
Yes. Shifting them from one side of the parcel to the other, given the short distance or front to back, isn't going to make a difference on that.
Great. Does anyone have any questions for Ashley at this time?
Yeah, I do. What is the legal required separation from the landfill to a structure like this?
I don't have the exact answer to that. I'd have to ask our engineering company. I think just their issue is that when they did the research on that, the boundary lines are not always 100%. So although we could get maybe a little bit distance from it, if there's any contamination farther on, then I don't know that there's any building that can be done there. But I can ask what the exact legal requirement is for that. I don't know offhand.
Okay, I know when we talked, when you were here last time, I think, I won't speak for Ken, but I believe he agreed. We wanted to keep this, the structure wherever it's placed as far out of the village's potential future use of that lot as possible.
Mhm.
And all 3 of these options are on the kind of the north end of the property. Nothing showing on the back, on the south end of this lot, which really would be more advantageous for the village in terms of having it out of the village's way for any near future expansion that the village was going to do. I see you very carefully left out the north end of the property on all your proposals. Now, it would have made the print even smaller and harder to use or read, but it's hard for me to see why, for instance, why option number 1, which is, I believe it's the one to the right, to the east in the wooded area, why that one could not have been placed on the south, directly back and on the south corner of that property.
I don't think that it can't not be placed back there. I think we were just trying to think about the infrastructure aspect of it,
Mhm.
running the power, running the roadway. There is what appeared to be like a snowmobile trail that runs right there as well. So then we, have to be offset from that. And then just that overall disruptance to your parcel, because we're going to have to clear,
Right.
all of those trees along that way. So I don't think that I just think we felt in the discussions out there that day that these were the best options at that time. But that, I mean, if you say you want us to go back farther, I can ask them to do that.
Well, if it was one of the really cold days, I can understand another reason why you may not have wanted to go tromping back there. But I, for one, would appreciate, looking at that. Option number 3 would probably be closer to the old landfill, whereas option number 1 is, would
Right.
probably be far
Correct.
enough away.
Yes.
That's all I have.
I have a question. Is it possible?
Who
for
is-
me This is Fred Breidenhagen. Can I ask a question? It has to do with the project that's going on out there.
Can we pause and let the other board members speak first, and then we will,
That'd be fine.
I will come to you, Fred. Any other questions from the board members online?
Yeah, Rick Hoyerman here. Between options 1 and 2, is there any operability or any other reason that the county would prefer option 2 over 1, other than it's just closer to the road, easier to construct, et cetera? Is there any other reason why that would be preferable?
From the engineer's standpoint, Edge Consulting being out there, no, he said both options would be viable. But again, that's it. Again, it was more about the infrastructure, the disruptance that we're going to have long term, because we're going to have to continue to maintain that, going all the way back.
Okay.
Anyone else online, Matt or Ken? Nothing from Matt. Ken?
Carly, I have one question. I thought I heard mention of a gasoline tank. Are we talking, what's going to be out on the site for fuel?
It's LP for the generator. We don't tend to do diesel. We'll do the LP tanks.
Oh,
You hear
LP,
that
okay.
answer, Ken?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions online? I'll just say really quickly, the Community Protection Committee has been staying on top of this and been a part of the conversation for a while, really making sure that we had the right coverage and making sure that Ephraim was a part of the conversation. And we would recommend moving with option 1. So the furthest away, we feel that would be the least disruptive for current potential expansion of the dump site, or that is, kind of what we discussed at a committee level. Personally, I did have a question that was asked of me after the committee meeting and didn't know how to answer it, so wanted to ask. Is there any issues with what is kind of emitted from these from the towers? Do we have any safety issues in that respect?
I don't follow the
Radio
question.
waves.
Oh, okay.
Or that sort of thing.
I mean, I don't know the answer fully to that. I don't know that there's any, immediate danger to have those there. If you don't mind, I do want to just bump back to the question about the moving the site or anything like that. We did just a visual look of those areas, right? So Edge Consulting will have to come back and do geotechnicals, archaeological studies of all of those areas. So for me to definitively say that any one site is completely viable, I can't give you that. So just know that those sites will have to go through additional studies to verify that they can structurally and, from all those other testings, be viable for a tower.
So then to follow up on Tim's request, is that something that they could look at, let's say, option 1 and something that's further back towards the property line? Is that
Yeah,
Just-
I'd try to tuck it back into that, was it southeast
Yeah.
corner?
I think we'd want to have a lead on where your preferred option would be, because all of those tests do take time and money. So to test one site first, I think would be our better option than to try to test them simultaneously. So if you want us to move it back is what I'm saying. If that's where you'd prefer we go, then we can. But yeah, we'll have to evaluate all of that with Edge.
Okay, when you do a test, when you do, will you want to be on the specific location?
Yes,
Okay.
because they have to
So
do
we
like
need to,
borings
we need
and
to settle
things.
on that first.
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
good,
Yes.
okay.
Fred, did you have something to ask?
I do. First of all, this must be an old photograph that I'm looking at. It doesn't cite our trailer parking lot out there. And you should be aware immediately, I guess that would be to the south of where the boat trailer parking lot is not on this and should have been. There is going to be the relocation of the stump dump property there, the dropping zone for that. All right, that's already been flagged. It's out there. Kind of reddish, pinkish flags have been placed there. They've been there since summer. But in order to really understand this, I think you should have a newer aerial. Just personal opinion, but be aware that there are other things going on in that site currently.
That's why CPC has recommended to move away from option 2, which is the one that is in that kind of top corner right there.
Vicinity.
Mhm. Any other questions or discussion? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion.
I'd like to ask a question if I could. My name is John Bykowski. I live across the street from this proposed site, across directly from the Weborgs. And today was the first I've heard of this project, so I'm a little shocked. And I'm wondering, why do we need 2 towers on the same street? There's one tower that's only about 300 yards immediately to the east of this tower. Why can't the utilization be combined? Is it something about Ephraim profiting from all of this?
I will attempt to answer and Ashley can back me up. So this has been discussed at the board level a couple of times previously, so it's not the first time it's been in front of the board. And as far as the other towers that are already available, that my understanding is the one that's in Ephraim is already full. So there isn't enough space for the technology, so it would require a new tower.
Yeah, I'll just, the only added comment to that is that the proposed heights are very similar and that other tower is loaded at the top. So there might be space a little bit lower, but we need to have the height at the top of that tower in order for us to get the coverage in the village like we would like.
Okay, thanks. And then one other question. Do we have any concerns with the airport? Aren't there regulations about proximity to an airport for towers of this height?
I'm going to let Ashley take that one.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all part of the studies that Edge Consulting will do. They'll have to get FAA, FCC approval. That's all part of that further investigation process. This was just our next step in the review, was getting some samples in front of the board.
And as a reminder, the height of the tower is
180.
180. All right. Teresa? Yes, please.
Thank you. Teresa Weborg, live on German Road adjacent to the property that you're talking about. If the proposed tower, if I forget how your numbers are, if that's number 1, that's closest to.
So this is 1.
Okay, the other one in the back. If this is strictly for emergency services communication purposes, I don't have any disagreement that those things need, technology needs to be updated, and all in favor of that, of course. However, that location closest to part of my property line and property, 180-foot tower, I feel I wouldn't want to see it. I wouldn't want to see it there. I like Tim's idea of on the other east side of that property, pushing it back as far as possible to the south side. There's nothing in that back 40 at this time. No one's built there and nobody lives there. Yes, there's some snowmobile trails that run around there. I am kind of curious what that tower being close to like the electric lines, that the power lines that run through there. I'm sure there's guidelines that they have to be certain, feet away, et cetera. But I would like to also state, after receiving close to an 18% property tax adjustment last year, and then seeing that this is coming up on the agenda, that that a tower would be put near my home, it certainly isn't going to help my property values, but my taxes are certainly up substantially from previous years. So that has me feeling a little disappointed, I guess. And then the only other thing is, I know that there are some other towers, maybe the one that's, a property so away, 200 or 300 yards away, might be full at this time. But I do believe that there was another tower put up pretty much off of Highway Q within the last few years. I don't know if it's Door County Broadband that put it up, but they had some newer equipment. Would that be a possibility to see if there's room there? So that's all I had to ask. Thank you.
Thank you. I know, and I will definitely pass this over to Ashley again, but all of the available towers have been reviewed as well to see if they are viable options for the project. But I
Yeah,
will.
And it's not all about also the availability. It's about the distance. Given the contours of the county with, the extensive bluffs and things, the farther we get away from this area, the more difficult it is for those signals to travel down. And so while there might be another one and it might have some space, our consultant has reviewed extensively to make sure the areas that we're evaluating and we're getting the targeted areas that we need. Because the farther we move away, the less coverage penetration you're going to get down in.
And when she means down in, there's a strip of like what I like to call downtown Ephraim that was having
down in the village. Yeah.
Right, and down kind of along the water that was not getting good coverage area. So with the recent suggestion with this tower, that was getting better coverage within Ephraim than we had seen in previous iterations of the plan. Any other questions or?
Charlie, this is Ken. Listening to Ms. Weborg and her concerns and listening to Tim's comments, I'm wondering how far, I guess it'd be to the south, we could push option number 1 and still be clear from the cap that we have on our old landfill. Is that something we could meet them in the field and look at?
I'm guessing we definitely can.
And it's really hard to see on this this exhibit we're looking at because the bottom part is cut off. But I think on the other side, I'm beginning to see the beginning of the cap on the landfill, but I'm not sure. But it just seems if we could push that option 1 further south, we could solve 2 things: get it south and out of the alignment with Weborg property and houses, and also reserve more property for the village of what we might eventually want to do with that.
Yeah, I mean, I can take that back to Edge and have them evaluate. I don't know. I think that part of the parcel is all pretty much the same. So him looking at that upper corner is going to give him an idea of what that back portion looks like. Again, it would just come down to those additional studies and borings and things like that. And yeah, making sure it's feasible with them to run it back there.
So tonight, is it going to be possible for this board, and I guess I'm asking the board, are we going to agree on a location for a preferred location for the tower? And if so, the only one I'll agree on is as far south and on that eastern border as possible. It sounds like Ken would like to look at that. Is that what we need to come up with tonight?
That would be my understanding, I guess, is we have to decide on a location, but if this is the feedback that we can give to you, is to move it as far south along that property line and see what the viability of that would be. That sounds like what we're hearing. Anything else online?
This is Rick. I agree with the approach that Ken and Tim have talked about.
So should we have a motion to that effect? Tim's going to attempt it.
Yeah. I move that we instruct the emergency, I don't even know what's the name of your organization.
Well, I work,
Department.
I would say County of Door to
Okay.
proceed with, yeah.
I move that we ask the County of Door to explore a fourth option, which would involve moving the location of the tower as far south and as far east on the village property as dimensionally possible, keeping in mind all relevant setbacks, including that of the landfill.
All right. Thank you, Tim.
I will second that.
Thanks, Matt. Any other questions or further discussion?
Can I just add one comment? Because I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with it. So,
Yes.
So just first, we're okay with then if we're moving it all the way down, we will have to do extensive clearing in that area of
Right.
those trees. Okay. And then we won't know 100%. We can, I think as far as exploring from my perspective would be then to do those tests, because that's the only way we're really going to know. I mean, I can have him shift that drawing down, but it's just going to look like the box a little bit farther down. So I just want to make sure if in your version of exploring that allows us to take those next steps and do the appropriate testing that we need.
I think, well, may I?
Yes, please.
Sorry. I agree that would be most expedient, as long as you should probably run the location past our administrator
absolutely.
and our president.
Yeah, I can have him update the map and send it over.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know how that incorporates into the motion, Kim, but it's part of the discussion,
Okay.
the
Sure.
understanding or consensus part.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions or clarifications? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Did I turn that off? Okay, so the next agenda item is an intergovernmental agreement that Ashley referenced earlier. I know in Brent's update, we have not had a chance to let our lawyer review it yet. But before anything else to add to that, Brent?
No, I mean, obviously the board's only had a couple days to look at this. So given that, my recommendation was, if there are any comments the board has now, can pass them along to me. We can, and then, recommend forwarding this to our attorney for, any comments or questions he may have for future review then by the board.
Are there any immediate questions that the board would like to ask about the agreement?
I guess a question for Ashley, in your perfect world, at what point are these documents signed? Is that just are you going on good faith to a point, or at what point do you need, formal documentation? And
I'll defer that one to the big guy.
If you could introduce yourself.
Thanks, Ashley. Ken Pavick, Door County Administrator. Sorry for being late. Actually, I was on a call with Jeff before I got here. So, I think the whole idea is obviously we're trying to work as government agencies for the best for the public. So in our mind, we're 100% working in good faith, and we're trying to be as transparent as possible. So really what we'd like to do is get this in front of you, have your attorney review it, give comments, work all that kind of stuff out. But then once we have all testing done, we have the drawings all set, we have the agreement set, we know everything's a go, we'll come back and ask for formal approval, move forward. But I think we're all trying to just do what's best, for getting the system up and running as expedited as possible. So, but again, I think it does require us to trust one another. And obviously we're both working on behalf of the citizens of Door County. So that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Thank you. Any other comments from the online board members or questions?
This is Rick. I think I would just have any comments or questions after our attorneys had a chance to look at it and mark it up if that's what he does.
Yep.
Great.
Okay. I just want to ask one question, and I believe it's been asked before, but I wasn't remembering once I was reading through this. Is there any sort of ability for the village to restrict what goes on to the tower in the future with any available space?
Well, what we've done with all of our other agreements, again, now this part also for transparency, what we have done with other sites is we're partnering with Ensight. They're the one who provides fiber throughout the county. So what we've been doing is we've been acquiring the site, and then we allow the Ensight through their partner Vertical Bridge to construct a tower and allow us to sit on it. And as part of that, a relationship with them, then they can place additional, providers on top of that. Now with this site, we have not had 100% verification whether Ensight would be a partner or not. So I guess we're waiting for that. This assumes that they are in this agreement, but there is the potential where this might be just a county-owned site. And if that was the case, I'd say there's an option, right? If it's 100% county-owned and maintained, then we would definitely be open to that discussion with you. Obviously, the other option, we're giving up that right in terms of that partnership with them.
Okay, thank you for that. I believe this is just a consent then. Do we all have a consensus of moving this over to the attorney for review?
Yes.
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 All right. I saw Ken's lips move.
Yes.
All right, Matt?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next agenda item we're going to move up is 10A, a presentation from McMahon regarding our wastewater project. Passing it first over to Brad. Sorry.
Yeah, just a couple things.
Microphone.
Yeah, just a couple things, but Tony will.
I think you'll have to speak up a little bit.
A lot better than what I can. So this project has been underway for quite a while now. Started back in 2022, I believe. The project was originally divided into 2 phases to receive the maximum principal forgiveness for both phases. Recently, we found out that phase 1 did rank high enough to qualify for principal forgiveness for 2026. The problem was we fell 8 spots below the cutoff line to actually receive it. We would still be available to get the Clean Water Fund low interest loan through the DNR, either situation. But yeah, this obviously brings up some questions. Are we better off waiting until 2027 to take on this project as one large project? Goal with that would be to try to reach the maximum principal forgiveness for 2027. I think that if it was all done at once, there would be some cost savings for construction wise, management and just the construction itself. But yeah, either way, I'll be here if there's any questions for me, but I guess I would turn it over to Tony.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for having me tonight. Here to talk about the wastewater improvements projects. You should have received 2 memos in your meeting packet. One being a project timeline with both past and present project milestones and upcoming deadlines. And the other being a sort of first look at the potential impact the wastewater treatment facility improvements projects will have on the village's sewer rates. First, I'd like to take you back and recap how we got here. Facility planning for the collection system wastewater treatment facility was completed back in 2024. Public hearing was held on March 18th, 2025 to present the facility plan to the village. And then the plan was submitted to DNR shortly after for approval. The facility plan recommended comprehensive improvements to the village's collection system lift stations and wastewater treatment facility, which were primarily aimed at extending the service life of the existing facilities, which are mostly now 40 years old. Also, one of the primary aims was improving operator safety and improving the efficiency, operability, and maintainability of the facilities. I guess to a lesser extent, maintaining reserve capacity, treatment capacity for future growth in the village in compliance with effluent discharge limitations, which the plant is doing an excellent job of currently. Prior to completing the facility plan, we discussed phasing the proposed improvements to maximize eligibility for principal forgiveness or grant funding for the project through the Clean Water Fund program under state fiscal years 2026 and the 2027 funding cycles, which are the final 2 years of funding coming out of the bipartisan infrastructure law. Therefore, we submitted ITA perfs to the Clean Water Fund program in October of 24 for the projects that were planned for the initial phase, which included the proposed improvements to the collection system lift stations, which include improvements at the beach lift station and replacement of lift station 2 at the intersection of Spruce and Water, and a portion of the work at the treatment plant. We understood this to be about half of the total scope of proposed work at the treatment plant and focused primarily on improvements to the front end of the treatment plant, including hauled and waste receiving, the main lift station, the fine screening and grit removal equipment replacement, and also work that would be required to set the stage for the next phase of improvements, which included in addition, a building addition to the existing service building to provide new office space, plant electrical and controls upgrades, and some additional storage space. We proceeded with the design of phase 1 improvements in May of 25 and submitted plans and specifications to the DNR in September of 25 to maintain eligibility for that Clean Water Fund state fiscal year 26 funding. We also submitted the funding application at that time in September of 25, conservatively requesting about $8 million in total funding for the initial phase of improvements. This was followed by submittal of the ITA perf for state fiscal year 27 funding in October of 25 for the second phase of the improvements. $6 million in funding was requested for the second phase, which primarily included work on the biological treatment systems, or the aeration basins and clarifiers, the effluent discharge end of the plant, solids handling, and the remaining portion of the electrical controls upgrades, as well as general improvements to the remaining areas of the service building, including the lab, bathroom, mechanical room, boiler room, chemical room, and lower pump room. The DNR published the Clean Water Fund State Fiscal Year 26 funding list on January 8th of this year. Showed that the village would not receive principal forgiveness in state fiscal year 26. As the 33 million in total available principal forgiveness had been completely allocated to projects with higher perf scores. There were 7 projects between the last project to receive general principal forgiveness and Ephraim's phase 1 wastewater treatment facility improvements project. However, both the lift station project and the phase 1 wastewater treatment facility improvements project are eligible to receive the subsidized loan funding through the Clean Water Fund at 55% of the market rate at the time of closing. The project timeline and deadlines memo in your meeting packet outlines past and upcoming milestones and deadlines, which are mostly based on maintaining eligibility for the Clean Water Fund Program state fiscal year 26 and 27 funding cycles. ITA PERS for the entire project, including the lift station improvements, phase 1 wastewater treatment facility improvements, and the phase 2 wastewater treatment facility improvements were submitted back in October of 25 to maintain this eligibility. Applied the specifications for the phase 2 project would be due to be submitted to the DNR on September 30th of this year, along with the funding application for state fiscal year 27 funding cycle. Under the timeline provided, the phase 1 improvements would be bid next month with construction, the construction period from May of 26 through November of 27. And the phase 2 project would be bid out at about this time next year, with construction to be completed in November of 28. The second memo in your packet provides a general analysis of potential impacts on the sewer rates based on a range of anticipated project costs and funding scenarios. We looked at the village's current sewer revenue and expenses and projected the anticipated revenue for year 26. We then projected what the new debt service and equipment replacement fund contributions could look like for both phase 1 at project costs of 6.5 million to 8 million, and the total project cost at 11 million to 12.5 million, based on current Clean Water Fund interest rates for both a 20-year and 30-year term loan. We projected the resulting annual revenue shortfall from the new debt service and a higher annual equipment replacement fund contribution. And separately applied that shortfall to both the current REU system and the sewer M&L to show what the potential impact could be if the project costs were recovered under each billing method. A summary of potential sewer rate impacts under the different scenarios is provided in table 6 at the top of page 9 in that memo, shown on the screen. Obviously, if you look at the farthest column to the right, which is the percent increase over current rates, this project is expected to have a substantial impact on the village's sewer rates. So given that the village does not will not receive any principal forgiveness under the state fiscal year 26 funding cycle, there are options on the table for how to proceed with completing these projects. The village could decide to proceed with bidding the proposed phase 1 lift station and wastewater treatment facility improvements under the state fiscal year 26 funding cycle, and the phase 2 improvements under the state fiscal year 27 cycle as originally planned. Or the village could decide to amend the scope of phase 1, shifting most of the project scope related to the wastewater treatment facility improvements into the second phase of the project, and bid the lift stations and proposed solar energy project at the treatment plant in state fiscal year 26. Shifting project scope into phase 2 would ensure that the village would be able to maximize the amount of principal forgiveness it could receive under the state fiscal year 27 funding cycle. But there are no guarantees that principal forgiveness will be available, as the project is expected to score very similarly to how it scored this year, and it really comes down to how many other projects are submitted in their scores. Under a normal, I guess I shouldn't say normal, but over the past several years, the score the village did receive this year would have been eligible for principal forgiveness in those past state fiscal years. The other option, the village could decide to combine the projects and bid them under state fiscal year 27 funding cycle. There are obviously pros and cons to each of these approaches. Some of these pros and cons can be quantified in dollars and some can't. But I guess at this point, I'd like to open it up to any questions, comments, and further discussion from the board.
Thank you. Does anyone, Tim, do you have anything to start us off? Or-
Well, yeah, maybe. And I don't know if this requires a crystal ball on your part. It sounds like our best bet is to try and raise the total cost of the project in order to qualify for the state assistance. Is that correct?
It's partly correct. The idea would be that under the current scoring system, 40% of the total project cost would be eligible for principal forgiveness. So in order to reach the cap on principal forgiveness in any given fiscal year, the project cost would need to exceed $5.25 million. So the idea would be to shift scope to that phase to be able to maximize, should the village fall high enough on the list to receive principal forgiveness, that you'd be able to receive the maximum amount.
Okay, and here's the crystal ball part. In do you see, does your company see other projects throughout the state that Ephraim would be competing with, so to speak? I know you didn't see it, maybe you weren't looking this time around. Is it something that you can investigate to see if we actually stand a chance if we roll it all into one, or try to load up the second phase?
The best answer I can give is that, based on the projects we currently have in house,
Mhm.
and talking to contractors out there, there will certainly be projects, a lot of projects trying to take advantage of that last year of principal forgiveness. However, in talking to contractors, they're starting to see a little bit of a slowdown, and are concerned about filling their plates.
Yeah.
So again, it's kind of I'd have to look in the crystal ball, but I can't. I don't have a good feel for what the other engineering firms are working for, and working on, and the other communities have going.
Okay, that's all I had.
Anyone online have a question for?
Tony.
Yeah,
Tony?
Rick Hoyerman here. So I just to kind of look at this overall, we enter into a contract for this work, however we bundle it. We apply for the principal forgiveness or shot down. We're still subject to a contract. And then let's just be honest, we turn over a 100% potentially rate increase to our constituents. Is that something that we're actually looking at doing here? I was not here for the previous discussions about how necessary this is. Since I've been on the board, I have just taken it as a given that all of this has to be done now, that we need to spend $11 to $12 million, and I have accepted that. But I'm looking at these numbers of what we're going to pass on as a rate increase to our constituents, and it's kind of shocking, frankly, to me. So I'm kind of I would be a little anxious about rolling the dice here. I mean, am I looking at this wrong? Tell me where I'm wrong on this, that we're potentially looking at locking in a situation where we're handing wastewater sewer bills to our constituents of 100+%. Where am I going wrong on that?
I think, Rick, one thing that I've just in discussion with other people, including Brent, that because we're just seeing these numbers now, that this is something that it is just a discussion item right now. So these types of questions, are we as a board, is that the way that we're going to approach funding? If yes, then we have to kind of move forward with this concept. If not, then we have to kind of not go back to the drawing board, but really think about how we want to look at different options for funding. I agree with you. This is not something that I would want to pass 100% over to our constituents. That doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't feel appropriate for the numbers that we're looking at. So from my perspective, I think it would be something that we would want to take the time to really see what our other options are. Right now, what's being presented though is yes, what you're reading, and correct me if I'm wrong, is to pass it along to the constituents, but that doesn't mean it has to be the only way.
And I understand that. I was not here. I mean, how dire is this? I realize that I'm asking a question now that predates me, that maybe was discussed 2 years ago at the board. That's one question I have. And the other thing I would point out is, we did this work, in the 1980s? We started the wastewater treatment plant, and I may be wrong about this, but I'm thinking that we didn't charge enough to save any money this whole time. So when I look at these numbers, and I get it, these are preliminary numbers, they do not contemplate what I think would be wise policy, and that is charging even more than this so that we don't run into the same thing 30, 40 years from now and pass this problem on to a future board. So these numbers are going to be, by definition, low. We're going to have to charge more, because I just wouldn't vote for anything. I wouldn't want to approve anything that we don't have a good plan for when this all needs to be replaced 30 years from now. So these numbers would have to be added on to if we're going to be responsible.
Harley, could I make a comment? Rick, in response to your questions, good questions. We froze our wastewater treatment rates for many, many, many years. And I can't answer why we did that. That was one of the reasons why I was anxious to do an inflationary increase on all of our rates. Now, we did raise them, I think, 8% for 25 and another 10% for 26. So we will be starting to accumulate, I don't know the amount yet, but starting to accumulate a fund for that 30-year from now replacement. But I'm just seeing these numbers along with you. I guess I saw them a couple days ago, and I feel the board has to have an opportunity to look at some combination. Ultimately, it's our project, it's our treatment plant. We're going to have to pay for it. But there could be a combination of what goes on our property tax bill along with rate increases. I think with our last major project, which we just finished paying off last year, all of the costs of that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brad or Brent, all the costs of that went through a property tax levy. It did not go through rates. But we have to look at this project when we get the number, well, we have the numbers now. We have to look at this project and decide, is it going to be through rates, through property tax, or a combination? I feel we have a lot more work to do on figuring out how we're going to pay for this, and also letting the public know the type of numbers we're looking at. That's why I'm very concerned about trying to do something next year right now because of these numbers. I would personally rather take some time, work with our auditors also, and figure out exactly. I mean, Tony made an estimate on these numbers, but these numbers, although they look very exact, I don't believe they are. There's more detailed work that needs to be done here. So I would like to take the time, and especially going back through our wastewater committee and Brad, and then working with the board of figuring out the best way to pay for this. As I said, there's no magic. We might get a couple $1 million in forgiveness, which would be great. But even when you take off that couple $1 million, you're still probably looking, at a $9 to $10 million project. Interestingly enough, we found out is that there's a 30-year loan. In the past, we've had 20-year loans. And given the fact that the equipment, some of our equipment that's out at the wastewater treatment plant right now, will be turning 40 years old in the next year or two. So a 30-year loan to me is something we should consider, given the useful life of that equipment. But I guess just to summarize, I think we have a lot of work to do, and I just don't feel I'm personally ready to make a decision on how to pay for this. Thanks.
Matt, do you have anything to add at this time?
I would echo mostly what Rick has brought up. It's I don't think it's fair to the taxpayers to all of a sudden receive a 300% increase all of a sudden because somebody dropped the ball for 10 years, 12 years. That's not their fault. And I think that we should take our time, like Ken said, but then we should also look into these other projects that we're talking about to see if we can give some forgiveness so that we're not increasing the rates by this much. Because the last 2 years, I know that my bill has gone up $300 alone a quarter. Just imagine if when the 300% happens. That would be my comments.
Thanks, Matt. I think I guess I also want to echo and kind of reiterate that first of all, this is not an actionable item. So I do think it sounds like we have kind of a consensus on the board that this is not something that we're ready to decide on. We need a lot more information and kind of thinking about some options to proceed. I guess as far as the next step is concerned, one thing that's been brought up in, I believe in Brent's, report, that we might have a second meeting that we might want to put on the books to have a discussion on this topic. I guess what I would want to say is, what are the questions that we want to make sure that are covered or excuse me, asked before we have that meeting, or make sure that there are other kind of give people time to kind of mull this over and see if there is anything that the auditors and the admin team can put together as well.
That's as good a segue as I'm going to get. One to, comments about, increasing sewer rates and how it's been paid, and, that rates haven't increased or didn't increase for a period of 10 years. It was brought up at the wastewater meeting yesterday that per our wastewater ordinance, our quarterly sewer rates are designed and built to pay for operational expenses. And within our ordinance, it's that sewer M&L that's intended to, and has historically been, at least for the last 25 years, used to pay for capital expenditures and principal and interest payments. So that's something we talked about. And regardless of what ends up happening, phase 1, phase 2, how this happens, probably is in need of an overhaul. Something our auditors brought up is, on top of just paying for inflationary expenses for operations, is there should be building in that, like we have the replacement fund for, equipment, mechanical equipment and things within the plant, but also starting to save ahead for future capital. Relative to those next steps, to avoid me rambling, which I'm capable of doing, I'll just read. Taking advantage of the fact that our auditors are here this week, Kim, Andre, and I sat down with Amber, our principal auditor, today to discuss the wastewater project and the financial reports received from McMahon. Amber and Andrea participated in a conference call last week, Wednesday, with McMahon as they were preparing the report for discussion tonight, providing them with financial data that they needed to compile the spreadsheets before you. The initial thought she had, echoing what we in the office felt, was that this is a lot for the board to digest in a short amount of time. As you can see, and Carly, you noted, we're not agendaed to take action on this tonight. With that in mind, if the board does wish to set a special meeting to discuss this project, Amber is willing to dig in to the numbers by the end of this month or whenever a future meeting would occur. Looking at the numbers and forecasts provided by McMahon, while at the same time compiling her own cash flow analysis of the project costs and financial assumptions made by McMahon from an accounting perspective. It's just two different worlds, Tony and team are in the engineering side. They're auditors that look at things a little bit differently. She wants to take an independent look at the current wastewater cash flow, the proposed debt structure, future cash flow projections, and future cash flow possible models. From From that, we can have a second set of eyes on the numbers that are laid out before us and the overall borrowing picture and the framework of the options presented. And look how we can possibly spread that across, users and taxpayers alike. A few options do exist, as Tony laid out within the table 6 here, for how we can fund this project. And they also will be a lot to digest. So having more information, and certainly more information from our auditors, will be helpful as we move that conversation forward.
I guess a question on top of that is back to you, Tony. As far as timing is concerned, I know that you mentioned either in this report or I've read in other places that, for example, the solar forgiveness or the funding that's available does run out at the end of, it has to be started within 2026, for example. So also, and there's other timelines involved. I would want to make sure that we're keeping that as part of our conversation as well.
Right. It is a little bit complicated. Under the current program, if the village demonstrates that work has been started on the solar project prior to July 1st of 26, the deadline to, I guess, complete the project goes away. If the project isn't started by July 1st of 26, there would be a formal deadline of December 31st of 27 to have the project completed.
I think I remember you reading what defines starting is a little nebulous, or is there more
A
definition?
little bit,
to
yeah.
that?
I mean, it could be as simple as clearing the site in preparation for the solar field would constitute the start of construction.
Great, thank you. Any other information that I guess you would need before we discuss if, do we try and set a meeting now, or is it something that we should let the auditors see how much time they need to start working through these numbers to present to us, digest?
I guess, relative to what options are still on the table for the board, all those things would help. Tony brought up, I think the 3 options. One is proceed as this is all drawn up now, phase 1 as presented, phase 2 as presented. The second was the hybrid option of moving some of the plant operational things to, coincide with like work. He brought up a good point at the wastewater meeting that there could be some, from a contractor standpoint, making that more attractive, so that you're, again, just lumping like work with like work. Let the receiving station, the 2 lift station projects kind of stand on their own, and the building related work up at the plant stand on its own. So, I think that certainly has merit. And the other one, understanding the impact this is going to have both on the village and making a decision on how we're going to pay for this, going through the different models of, again, it's not as simple as what's the rate going to be, because there's multiple different ways that we could decide to do this. That's a lot to digest. That's a lot to sort through. And similar, to Ken's point and others about how this is going to go down for the public. Granted, we're just looking to make a decision if we move forward with some type of work in the fiscal year 2026. That has to happen, in fairly short order. Now, granted, the bid opening, I think, is what has to happen by the end of April. Am I correct in that, Tony?
Not, well, if the solar project was kind of driving the schedule, we would have wanted to have it bid under construction in order to try to meet that July 1st, 26 deadline. Because under state fiscal year 26, there is no principal forgiveness offered. That could push, if you're looking strictly in terms of the project funding, that kind of pushes that deadline out a bit.
Okay. Because a typical way to look at it would be, what are our dates certain? We have to do X by Y, and then walk it backwards. So I guess, I was operating on the assumption we had to have a bid opening in April, which means we would have to be looking similar to your timeline before of, we need to make a decision on putting this out to bid by March at the latest,
Right.
Which again is concerning with getting that information out to the public and let them have time to digest that and come to the board to talk to the board, because I'm sure they will want to talk to the board. But again, to the question, I think it's worth discussing what of those options are still on the table, or any of those options off the table to start, framing a little bit more. I think the foundation of Amber's work will be the same. She's starting with just her own analysis to get to the same point where Tony and team are at now, and then laying some additional framework for, options of models for how we could choose to pay for it and divvy that up. But again, that's a series of meetings. It's a lot of work to happen in fairly short order. So it's like anything, the more information we can give to the people we're asking to provide us with answers to, the better. So
Ken?
Tony, here's my question. It seems what we have to decide tonight is if we're going to try to do anything in 2026. What is the dates when we have to let this project or send it out for bidding? And then what is the date when the board has to decide indeed to let it for construction? So we know what we're dealing with. What's the last date?
That's a good question. So just to expand on my previous comment, that April, the original April bidding timeframe we were discussing had to do with a June 30th deadline for having contracts executed and uploaded to the Clean Water Fund site as we work towards the loan closing. That deadline only applies to projects receiving principal forgiveness. I believe the last available time to close on a state fiscal year 26 project is actually like February of 27. I would need to confirm that, but based on my recollection, I believe that would be, like I said, the final date to close. So you could work back from that date to a bidding date sometime in, I guess, late 26.
I think it would be very helpful if you would write down those dates and provide them, because it doesn't sound like we're under the fire drill I thought we were under. And we don't want to let $100,000 forgiveness for solar wag a $12 million project, in my opinion. So I would rather take the time now. If we still have the opportunity to divide it into phase 1 and phase 2 as we had planned, it would be interesting to see those dates that you mentioned, Tony, and then the board has some time now to still proceed that way and to figure out how we're going to pay for it.
Yep, I could certainly provide those.
Does that give you, Brent, what you're asking for? And
yeah, I mean, well, I guess the board would have to make it, well, it's to the solar thing, I think with that discovery, yeah, I think the phase 1 and phase 2, we still have some time to sort through that now that there was no principal forgiveness. But we can't probably take 2 or 3 months to decide how we're going to do phase 1 if we still intend solar to be a part of a phase 1, unless that would be a standalone project. Now that's a totally different topic, but I guess relative to that, since I'm talking, if we take the time to discuss options, knowing we're not necessarily under the gun anymore, when would be then a drop dead to make a decision on if we're still doing a phase 1 in 2026 fiscal year, a phase 2 in 2027 versus lumping everything into a 2027? Would that be with the applications in the fall then? That September deadline when we would have to make that decision if we're going to pivot and put it all together?
Correct.
Okay.
I guess I would just say that I'm not 100% ready to give up on the idea of solar. I think it is something that while there is, a set number of money that we could get for forgiveness, there is in the long run, it's not just the right thing to do. There is a fiscal gain to it as well. There is some information in the packet. I know we have a lot of information to digest, but that is something that I would want to continue to explore as well.
I think we were always going to bid the solar as an option so that we would have the numbers, and then when the board decides to award, they can make a decision on solar at the same time. So yeah, I agree. We want to keep that option out there. I'm just suggesting that the $100,000 toward this whole project shouldn't make or break even the solar decision. We should make it based on the project and still be bidding solar as an alternative, even if we put the whole thing together.
Okay, thank you for that. Matt, did you have anything else to add? No. Okay, thank you. Rick?
Oh, not at this time.
Okay, so I think as far as, again, this is not an actionable item. We will get more deadline information, more specific deadlines for us to kind of work backwards from McMahon, thinking through different scenarios that will be presented to the board, including some insights and financials from our auditors. And we'll determine when we actually connect, when we have more information.
Sure. Should we just play that by ear a little bit?
I mean, it
and
seems
let
like
staff work with our auditors, and Tony will provide updates when he has them. And
Yeah.
if that's ready in a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, we can make a decision if we want to have a special meeting, or if the March meeting is only a week
few weeks
away,
away.
just might as well wait one more week and meet regularly scheduled in March.
I guess I think at this point it makes sense at this point to probably have it in a regular board meeting to give more time to it, unless we hear otherwise from you that again, I don't want us to make any decisions in a rush. So if we think a special meeting would be something a dedicated meeting would be helpful, that's another thought.
Yeah, I guess, obviously it's as spoken to in another item before, all of our meetings are open. It's all been posted.
Yeah.
But, again, from how this goes down from a public standpoint, when we do other capital projects and they haven't been nearly as big as this, we have, reports before the board and get that out on the street, if you will, months in advance of a letting. So, there's an engineer's estimate, there's, a financial impact report from the village, and then we all wait and see what happens. So that's the only thing is, obviously we're here and it's publicized, and I'm sure word will spread a little bit, but again, and I don't know if there's a scenario where these numbers become any less scary. You can potentially split that out, a little bit and soften the blow by increasing the blow to another. But this on its own, without the context or the opportunity to listen to this conversation are going to be pretty jarring for a lot of people to look at.
I guess if anyone online has a kind of strong feeling about setting a meeting now, or we can wait to see kind of what information we get and then set it at that time if we need to have a special meeting.
I would wait until the next regular scheduled meeting.
Okay.
I'd play it by ear.
Okay.
If we get lots of information and there's a good reason to meet early. Otherwise, I agree. Cover it during the regular meeting.
So let's, at this time, tentatively plan for this to be covered at the March meeting. All right. Next agenda item is discussion and consideration regarding future meeting to consider putting phase 1 of wastewater project out to bid. Based on the fact that we have kind of an updated understanding of the actual timeline that we're trying to hit, it sounds like we might just not move on this agenda item at this time, but.
Correct. Yeah, I agree.
Mhm.
Okay, great. All right, so then, excuse me, the next agenda item that we have moved up is 9A, discussion regarding Moravia Point Landscaping Project Draft Working Plan. So Matt, first I'm going to hand it over to you, and I also know that we have Fred online that wanted to discuss it as well.
So I went back to the PFU committee with the request from the board. The committee was in favor of having vegetation or shrubs or something to hide the railing. There was a question that they would like to know from where you don't want to see the railing versus, so for example, center of the road, the sidewalk. We discussed some of the plantings that Ms. Hutchins had recommended. And I guess I will let Fred speak a little bit on this next.
Thanks, Matt. Fred?
Yeah. First of all, I want to apologize to Matt. I really thought that he was clear on everything that we had said going into the other meeting. I don't know how everything went off the rails, but this plan that you were given to look at is a preliminary construction plan so that we could start going out and getting prices and things like that. It was to give you an overall idea of a minimalist plan, a work scope. It had nothing to do with landscaping. That was the next phase that we had just started working on. And somehow that all got jumped the gun and put us back a month in going forward with this. So if you have any questions, I guess, just to give you an idea, we believe there has to be somewhere between 202 and 210 feet of dimensional stone used to hold back the soil that's got to be put on there. We'd like to go and in the spring have a controlled burn and get rid of as much of that grub that's in there. Talked to quite a few construction guys. They say grub out the stumps, but there's some people that want to see us just cut them down, and that's fine too. We have to have the guardrail. Surprisingly, Ephraim never has looked at that. It's a huge burden because if a car goes over that, it's our liability. It's not been brought up to code forever. Somebody was referring to how high it is. When you measure that, it's 18 inches to the center of that. All right, so we looked at that and we would contact the highway department and see if they would take on the job this spring of raising up that stuff. There's approximately 3 of those sections need some work. We could either put 3 new sections on there. They're easy to put up. Or we could lay them down on the blacktop and take a sledgehammer out and straighten them out ourselves. No big deal. All right. So now we have Ann Hutchins and Kim helping us with the landscaping. And we are also looking at landscape engineers that tell us what kind of plants are going to be able to sustain the load of snow with the salt in it and the potassium or whatever that stuff is, potassium nitrate, I believe it is. All right. So if you have any questions, that is what it was. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and entertain you guys with a pretty good answer. However, we have not picked the plants yet. All right. We are at that stage right now where we're looking at picking those particular plants among others. And we're looking at the placement of those plants and we had it fully intended to cover up at least part of that railing. We also do not want to see that, okay? Another thing I should point out, two other things that, and I would like to see a motion on this stuff tonight, is that we're looking at the idea of patching that great big miscolored crack and concrete with some type of a, I guess it's like a resin, and then they put in stone and then hard, it's called, my God, I forget, it's called a rubble finish. All right, we have it on many of the old Ephraim buildings. You can look at it on the back side of the Anderson store, has a great deal of it. The other thing that is of real importance, and I know everybody kind of downplays this, is we have this god awful ugly piece of conduit that's been up there forever. It's smashed, all right? And no one seems to see that, so no one gets after it. But we must identify what that is. We know that it's a communication wire of some sort. It went up when Mike Minnerman was a maintenance person. He approved it and looks like hell. And I think that we have to find out who has that, and at the minimum, contact them and instruct them of what we are doing so that they have lead time to go in there and at least plan on how they're going to cut it off or whatever they're going to do with it. So hopefully that's a better presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Can I ask a clarifying question before I turn it over to anyone else before I speak again? But if you could go, well, first of all, what we're looking at here on the screen, sorry, is this the plan in your mind, Fred, that you're referencing when you say the plan, like this essential, the visual that we're looking at here?
This is the plan that the group put together. All right. We listened to what everybody had to say, and we wanted to keep it very minimalist because we didn't know what plants to actually get. Believe it or not, we are not landscapers. All right. And so we were going out and we were going to seek that information, but we wanted to get approval on going forward with at least getting costs on this, the working plan. All right. And then adding the landscaping after. We knew that we were going to put up the 3 trees, but we had no idea what kind of ground cover we were going to use. Kim has been real valuable to us. They came up with some really good mixes of grasses and wildflowers. Looks really, really good. And but we got to find the right group plantings to cover up the rail. But yes, that is that's what we're looking at right there.
Okay, so I don't know that that was in front of the board last month, but okay. And then the other thing, if you could go to page 52, so we scroll up. So just as you were kind of speaking through everything, Fred, is this essentially what you're proposing as far as like next steps to put together an overall plan? Just so I can understand what we're even, if you wanted a motion, I don't know exactly. I want to make sure that we understand what we're even potentially making a motion on.
Well, what we were trying to do is give you guys an idea of the working plan so that we could, I'm not going to waste my time. If you guys don't want that plan, that's fine. But I'm not going to go out and start pricing this stuff if we can't agree on it. That would be just a big waste of time. I'm not into it. All right. We're happy to do the work. It's fun to do the work. I love doing the work, actually. But I am actually going in the right step to do this. All right. We have a plan and we need your approval to go out and seek the costs for all of this stuff, because ultimately we understand that you guys are going to make the end call on this whole thing. But we wanted to get out there and get on this so that we understood that we're not spinning our tires with this plan. All right.
Yep. I just wanted to clarify that when you say the plan, that we have the visual that we confirmed, and then also these are the components of what you are potentially going out to look for, and that's what we're trying to get agreement on. What we're looking at here right now, page 52 of the identified scope of work that was in the packet.
I believe so. I don't have that with me. I did not think I was going to be doing this. I'm far away right now.
Okay. All right. Well, then I guess I will then turn it over to anyone online if they have any questions at this time.
Hey, Fred, oh, go ahead, Ken.
Okay, I wasn't aware, this scope of work has been here since the beginning. And I've made my comments on before, Fred, and you personally. I think you ought to leave the wall, leave the guardrail. We're gonna have a project on that wall, taken all the way up to Q eventually. I thought we were looking at a landscaping plan, how to landscape. And I would say any landscaping we do, we just make sure it's far enough from the wall that when we do rebuild the wall off Moravia Point, it'll be vertically rebuilt. We won't damage the stuff. But I think you're getting, I don't know, I think you're going too far talking about the guardrail, talking about the wall. That wall does need work and it could very well come out. But I was hoping we would see a landscaping plan. Just stick with that.
Ken, can I say something? And I apologize if I offend you, but we were getting at that, all right? And then there seemed to have been another person that started getting into working on that without us even knowing. And that's when you and I talked about that, all right? So it's like the cart got before the horse. We never got to that point, all right? And then came December and January and everybody leaving and things like that. And so that's where we find ourselves. We're happy to continue doing it. And if you don't want the wall, that's fine. Thank you for saying. Then we won't work on the wall. All right. But the other stuff, the dirt, the dimensional stone, raising the rail, all of that, we can do that. If you want more landscaping, that's cool, because this plan that you're looking at, and I explained this to you before, this was a construction type plan, and that the actual landscaping would be added later as we went. This was a minimalist plan to not impact everybody's ideas. It was to put a base down so everybody's ideas could be incorporated into it.
I hear what you're saying, Fred. So why don't you go ahead and work on the landscaping plan?
All right. Well, we have to get your approval to go ahead and we can work on the landscaping plan, and we're going to do that. All right. But are we going to get approval to go out and start getting bids and stuff like that on the construction of it, the dimensional stone, raising the rail, bringing
Forget
in
the rail. What rail are you talking about? The guardrail?
Yeah, it's not legal.
Be. Don't go there, Fred. Let it be. Let the guardrail,
legal.
Let the wall be. Otherwise, we're in the whole retaining wall project. That's what I'm trying to avoid.
No, I think you're missing something here.
No, I know you're going to talk about the height.
And you don't want it raised. It's illegal. It's illegal.
Don't go there, Fred. We're talking landscaping, I thought. I don't know. I'd be curious what the other board members have to say.
I will say, to kind of follow up on Ken's point, this specifically is, as an agenda item, the landscaping project. So as Ken is saying, that's getting more into an infrastructure, potentially larger project with guardrails and the wall, is what I'm hearing and understand as well. I would say, as far as the landscaping plan that was presented, again, sorry to make you scroll again, Brent, that's kind of more in the black and white option, I think is, in my opinion, it's a starting place. What I don't totally understand is what that would actually kind of end up looking like. My understanding is it's to add kind of a visual delineation outside of just the flowers that were presented. And if that's the case, then I think that could be a good starting point to get an understanding of how many plants we might need, what the preparation might require, going out to different kind of experts in that realm to understand kind of the entire scope to get it to look like this. And that's my understanding of kind of what would be the next step.
Well, I have a question, if I might. Are you saying forget about the dimensional stone too?
I'm not personally saying that, no. But if it is something that
Let me ask Can I ask Ken a question? Ken, are we supposed to forget about the dimensional stone?
No, I didn't say that, Fred. I just said leave the retaining wall and the guardrail alone, because we're going to be tackling that as a separate project. No, the dimensional stone, everything else you have besides that, I consider the landscaping plan. And I understand why you want to put in the dimensional stone for an erosion control to build up the earth in there. That's fine.
Okay, all right.
That's just my opinion. I mean, I want to hear from.
Rick, do you have anything?
Well, yeah, I think I think that what was presented to us at the last meeting makes some sense. I've always when I first heard it, I considered it to be an interim step. And I think that we should proceed. You know, maybe we need a chronology of how this is going to go, but I think it would be best to proceed simply with those things that we can do that have to be done initially. Grind out or grub out the stumps, put the dimensional stone in, plant, do whatever you know, the erosion control, do those things, and then later we can determine with professionals or not, whatever, plantings, etc. But I like what was as I was, I think, fairly clear at last meeting. I was very content with what was presented as an interim step, and I would like to see us proceed with that tonight. The guardrail and the retaining wall, that was not part of the discussion last time. I think that it was merely about getting rid of the stumps. I like the idea of a controlled burn or whatever we need to do to get rid of you know, the invasive stuff, put in the stone. We can do all of that, and then as a next step, you know, discuss, you know, plantings, etc. That makes sense to me. And so I think that that's the way we should proceed tonight, so that we can get going on this, so that we're not discussing this 5 years from now. That's what I would really like to see.
Exactly.
All right, Rick, did you have anything else, Tim?
Yeah. As far as, I think we've covered the wall and the guardrail to leave those out of the project, and I agree with that. And just a couple notes, the plant heights, as far as, you know, how high we want to have all this stuff, we talked about that at the last meeting, to plan on plantings that will actually grow to be a maximum of 1 to 2 feet above the current height of the guardrail. And that's just that. That's not based on looking at it from the base of the, you know, like the sidewalk or across the street or from out on the water. It's simply let everything, size everything to grow to be a maximum of 1 to 2 feet above the guardrail. You know, draw a horizontal line from the guardrail out, add 1 or 2 feet to that, and then measure down, and you know what the height of your plantings should end up at.
That was our consideration.
Yeah. Well, I don't see anything about that in your scope of work or your meeting minutes.
Again, that's not the scope of the work. and
Fred,
that
I'll
is
talk
not-
now. I'll talk now, Fred. I like the idea of getting started on the plan. I would like to see something a little bit more specific beyond the wall, on the black and white, or yeah, it's kind of a black and white, where you've actually drawn in some of the species to plant. I think that's great, but I'd like to see something going further south of the wall myself. This is just my opinion, to continue hiding that guardrail. And I'm not sure if I don't think the flowers are going to grow that high. I'm not under that impression. So I'd like to see something along those lines. But that, you know, what you have started here on this black and white is, to me, the right direction to go. As far as timing, We talked, there's been talk about grinding out the stumps or removing. I wouldn't remove. We talked about the stumps in previous minutes too. I would leave the stumps if you want to cut them right down to ground level. I think that would be the best. But I would only remove stumps where the stump itself interferes with planting, the visual planting. Otherwise, leave the stumps there. They will deteriorate over time. And in the meantime, they are perfect erosion control. Yeah, again, my opinion. As far as getting the dimensional stone set in early on in this project, I would want to re-examine that and be sure that having the dimensional stone there does not interfere with actually digging in and planting the trees and bushes. If all the heavy equipment, I'm assuming you're going to need backhoes or something to get some of this digging done. If that can all be done from the Moravia Street side, sure, then that's fine. But I wasn't clear on how that work was going to be done. So I want to be sure that, we don't get ahead of ourselves on some of the details. The dimensional stone, I'm not opposed to it. I just don't want to put it in and then have it become an expense because we're either damaging it or trying to work around it in the future. And something else that I think did come up either in your meeting minutes or in the scope of work, as far as I think we will want to make a decision early on as far as having our maintenance department personnel actually doing the work, the physical work. And especially, maybe we can break the work up into sections, but especially the planting itself. I would be in favor of looking at hiring a professional to do that work, especially with the soil types there. Now, lots of different trees grow up there. Chestnut trees grow, apple trees grow, cedar trees grow. There was another big deciduous tree that came down last fall. So things will grow in that soil, but we should be very careful if we're going to spend money on specific trees and bushes, that they are started out in the right soils. And I would prefer a professional be involved in that whole phase.
Yeah, well, that's what we said. We had said that.
I don't know that we've heard that, but I guess I want to echo something that Tim just said. And I do think that there were a lot of local experts that we could kind of tap into for some of these recommendations for plants that work well in the soil and have erosion control options. And I think, again, I also agree with Tim that what we're looking at here in the kind of black and white plan has kind of a lot more components to it. And I think would be a helpful starting point to have a little bit more variety and thought put into it. Because I also think that the variety that we're talking about compared to the other plan are the larger plants that would probably need a little bit more time to kind of take roots, if you will, and would want to make sure that we're not ripping out plants to put in new plants unnecessarily, and think through that part of it.
Yeah.
Any other?
I agree to all of that. All right. That's nothing that we don't want to do. All right. We want to do all of that, and we'll leave the wall alone and we'll leave the rail alone. But when you see those writings of all those plants put in there, I mean, the committee did not do that. Another person that's not on the committee did that. All right. So if there's confusion, which apparently there is, there's nothing I can do about that. We're cool with the whole thing. Let's get to work on this thing.
Okay. Can I get a motion?
I have a question for you first, Carly.
Sure.
You said a variety. How many species is a variety?
I mean, the true definition is probably more than 2. But I would say this is where I think an expert would be why they should be involved at that point to really decide what makes the most sense, what's available at this time, what is going to have the right type of, be supported in this environment.
Okay, so the primary goal, so I understand this correctly, is to address the guardrail primarily.
No. No.
The vision isn't the primary goal not to see the guardrail?
Oh, for the visual, I would say that's not the only priority for me. No, but maybe it is for other people. Maybe that's what Tim is saying. You mean as far as like guidance for the variety? Is that what you're asking?
Well, I mean, based off of this plan here, if you look at the coralberry, the meadow rose, those things are very good for controlling erosion. They grow to the height of maybe 1 to 2 feet to cover that guardrail. The wildflowers that were presented in the same thing do the same as well. I advise everybody to go over to North Orchard and look at Mike Flood's field. All of those things do that 1 to 2 feet above the guardrail on a horizontal plane to cover that. So I'm just looking for a little more guidance here as to how many varieties you would like above and beyond that.
I would, if I may, I would start with the list that Ann Hutchins provided, showing the baby blue, dwarf blue spruce, the American hazelnut, the snowberry, the coralberry, and the meadow or smooth rose. I think that's a good start. I hate to say, it's the end all list, but it certainly is a good start. And I think, while this isn't an arboretum that we're trying to create, a reasonable amount of interest and variety is going to be, if we're going to go to the trouble of working on this point, it ought to look nice. And I guess I would have to add, let's make it low maintenance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And so my reply to B was that is I just quoted 3 things that are on that plan that you said about Ms. Hutchins. If you look at the baby blue, I wouldn't do that because that grows to 20 feet. I would stay with the dwarf spruce, which she also recommended. So we are using recommendations from her. I'm asking the variety. How many varieties do you need so that we can move this project forward?
Well, I mean, again, I think we need to incorporate someone who is a professional in this sense, but if we're going to start with 5.
Yeah. You want a number? Sure.
You guys got to understand something. I did say that. We're talking to actual highway landscapers, all right, to try and get a handle on the whole thing. We just got this pushed at us. This thing is getting worse and worse.
I think from this discussion to last discussion, we've actually gotten more details, at least as far as I think, for moving forward. But so is it time for a motion?
No.
Well, okay. We were discussion regarding Moravia Point landscaping. I was not under
Oh.
the impression we were going to consideration, I think, is the motion part.
Is it? Okay. So I guess, do you have enough information to move forward with working with additional people, hearing the feedback that you've gotten so far?
Yeah, we will come back with another working document for you next month.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, so the next agenda item to move back up to administration is the update regarding the administrative office remodel project. And this is going to be really brief in that, on top of kind of what was presented in Brent's excuse me, his report. Ken, Brent and I have met with the engineers to kind of start talking about a needs assessment, not just for the employees, but also for the building itself. And we want to have something to present to the board in the next couple of meetings to really have some options to respond to visually and be able to kind of make sure that we're moving in the right direction or give us a little bit more guidance at that point. Anything else to add? All right. Okay. Next is the discussion and consideration regarding approval of costs for survey and hazardous materials inspection of administrative office as a part of the office project, which this is the information in front of us here. And Brent, do you have anything additional?
Yeah, generally, I think it should speak for itself. This is something that was brought up by Keller the last time we met. You know, they've done a fair bit of initial work. Obviously, we've got a nice big lot there, but relative to survey, you know, anytime there's a construction project, we need a you know, accurate survey to work from. We don't have one for the property. And another big one for, obviously, everyone is well aware of the building, but if you think of it, it's kind of like a split entry. So being that the main connection is to where the admin offices are in the old meeting room, that's elevated a couple feet from grade. So within that, in addition to the two-dimensional survey, three-dimensional is needed from an elevation standpoint. Just because anytime you're talking about a public building, you know, handicap accessibility, ramps, number of stairs, how all that's going to work is very important into the constructability and the overall plan. And then the hazardous materials, that's just something necessary with, you know, any type of demo work to an older building, is they got to understand what it is they're working within that. So some of that inventory, which obviously the more they find, unfortunately the cost will go up, but that certainly will have impact on not only cost, but future usability and what hopefully avoid surprises once things get opened up is the goal. So first, the civil survey, looking at $6,500 and $1,200 for the environmental / hazardous materials inspection.
Any additional questions before we entertain a motion?
I think I'm all in favor of it. Where will the money be coming from?
Probably room tax, if I'm honest.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, it's like anything, you know, anything that is a potential room tax expenditure goes in the room tax folder. As you know, we handle that, you know, in the spring of the year following. So we'll put that there, but we'll certainly be taking a look if, you know, we have a overall good financial picture for 2026. Maybe there's other funds available through operations, but we don't know that at this point. It's not budgeted. So that's the, I guess, conservative approach at this point.
Any other questions? Otherwise, the total is $7,700 to combine the two. Would we have okay with one motion for that?
Well, it's all on one sheet of paper. I move that we approve the agreement for additional services from as presented from Keller for an amount not to exceed $7,700.
Can I get a second? Thanks, Matt. Any other further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All right, motion carries. The next agenda item is discussion and consideration regarding committee appointments, specifically Green Tier. A little context for that, when Green Tier was put together, one of the goals was to have kind of representation from the different, I don't know why agencies are coming to mind in Ephraim. And we had lost our Ephraim Historical Foundation representation, but they have a new employee that I've had a conversation with and has been presented and approved by Green Tier, Zoe Sanders, who would like to be a new member of the Green Tier Committee. If anyone has any questions, otherwise I would entertain a motion.
What's the name?
Zoe Sanders.
Zoe. I move that we approve Zoe Sanders to join the Green Tier Committee.
All right, thank you.
Second.
Can I get a second? Thank you, Ken. All those in, or any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 All right, thank you. Okay, next is wastewater, down to 10C, discussion and consideration regarding hiring a summer intern for wastewater department, and I will ask Brad to come up.
So, yes, this is something that's been done in the past. It's been a couple of years since we had an intern, but it's proved to work pretty good. That's how we got Dan here. So, yeah, I put together that little letter there. But mainly the goal right now is to send out our listing to see if we can draw any interest for interns. The thought would be to pay them the proceeds from the well water testing lab. I did send the accountant email a couple weeks ago, but I haven't received an answer yet. But I would assume that there's plenty more than $9,800 in that account.
Any questions for Brad?
I see that this person is primarily going to do some lab work. What will Dan be doing?
It'll be lab work and stuff too, but that's also the time of year when we do all of our septic inspections, all the outdoor work. So there's plenty. We used to have 3 full-time guys that stayed busy.
I guess my question is this enough to call it an internship, the type of work, you know, from what we're seeing in front of us? Is this something, I think maybe in the second kind of like position or posting that we're seeing here? Would this be enough to be considered an internship to get the credit and experience that they're hoping to gain?
That's actually the same one that we used when Dan was here, and he did get college credits.
Okay.
So previous years it did have some maintenance work involved too, but we're looking just at wastewater and well water testing.
Would you see that freeing Dan up for more work, you know, with his responsibilities throughout the village as far as like trash collection, things like that?
Sure, and myself included.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, Ken or Rick?
No, I don't have any questions.
Me either.
Okay.
I move we approve wastewater pursuing a summer intern with funds, payment to be taken out of the water testing facility for an amount not to exceed
I want to say like 98.
$9,800.
Can I get a second on that?
May I amend that? An amount not to exceed $10,000.
I'll
Can
second
I
it.
get a second? Thank you. Thank you, Matt. All right. Any other questions or discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right. Motion carries. Okay. Next is committee minutes for review. Any questions or discussion? Do we have to motion to approve that? No, I don't think so. Okay. Any new business for next meeting other than what's been discussed already? Okay. All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Thanks,
Second.
Tim. Thanks, Matt.
Aye.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All right. Thanks, everyone.